Let's take it back to the origin story, though. Where are you from originally?
Oh God. I'm originally from Crimea. Have you heard about Crimea?
Yes.
You
Yeah, I
probably have,
have.
yeah. So, I mean, at this point, it depends on your like where do you stand, and that's how people kind of figure out where you're like from when it comes to Crimea, because
Oh, I see.
it's a territory that's kind of under Russian control right now, but it's Ukraine. But I'm Ukrainian. I was born in Ukraine, so I say I'm from Ukraine, but giving my background, I usually I'm a bit hesitant with that. I sometimes it takes a little bit of time for me to figure out like what I should say, not to cause any problems. But I'm guessing with in your case, we're good. So I'm
Uh-huh.
Ukrainian, yeah.
So, like, depending on what the other person is expecting or the way that they see the war, they might want you to say you're from Russia.
Yeah,
Is that the deal?
yeah, and especially considering the fact that I'm also Russian. I'm Russian. I have Russian citizenship as well. So
Okay.
I have a lot of Russians that I know, a lot of Ukrainians that I know, and when I don't know the person, I just don't want to cause any issues, and I don't want to mention anything. It's true to many Russians out there right now, who are out of the homeland, and they're kind of like they're hesitant for the right reason, not to mention it like all the time, just
Yeah.
you know, just to be safe.
I
I feel
mean,
safe
I
now.
think, yeah, and I mean, I'm sure we can both agree that borders are pretty arbitrary at the end of the day. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
this podcast is really about cultures and languages more than anything, and those kind of aren't necessarily limited to borders. You can have neighboring countries that speak the same language. That happens all the time. Canada, the U.S., right? And share a lot of cultural aspects as well that have nothing to do with those two particular countries. So like, how is it between Ukraine and Russia culturally speaking? Is there a lot of overlap between those two countries, or how does that work?
Well, historically, we're very alike, both like in appearance and in mentality and everything. There are different things that are like different depending on the situation, depending on like what you're talking about. Every person is different, and also I found this in Canada mostly. But I'm confirming that for myself that we're all mix of different stuff. We're not just like I'm sure you're Canadian, but you're also like like Scottish or Irish or I don't know. It could be
German
anything.
in my case.
Okay,
German,
German.
yeah. Hmm.
Some people say I'm also part German, but I also studied German for a while. So in Ukraine and in Crimea, we are a mix of like Russian, like Ukrainian, Belarus, Jewish, Bulgarian, many different things. Now, of course, it's a little bit edgy, but historically, like when I was a kid, um, I I am aware that I lived in a bilingual situation. Like I know Ukrainian and Russian, and for me that was like usual stuff. There was nothing unusual for me at the time. But later in life, when I traveled to like Russia, or I traveled in Europe as well when I was like a little kid, I noticed that in Europe, for example, most people know two languages, but they're not like bilingual. They just learn it just because it's a good thing to do, and I agree with them. But when I traveled in Russia, I realized that not a lot of people understand Ukrainian, for example. In terms of going back to your question, Ukrainians and Russians are alike in many ways, but also very different in many other ways. So there's nuance to that, but it depends on how deeply you how deeply you dive into the culture.
So it kind of goes in some ways. It only goes in one direction, where like Ukrainians speak Russian, but not a lot of Russians speak Ukrainian.
Some Ukrainians don't speak Russian also. When someone asks me to just describe the Russian-Ukraine kind of situation, just relationship, or how these nations are like, how they treat each other, I would say it's a lot like, I don't know, English and Irish, or like maybe even Americans and Canadians as well. So Canada is a big country. It's a big country and very like powerful in all the ways. But obviously, when we put U.S. next to it, it's like, well, U.S. is it's a superpower.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So in terms of Russia and Ukraine was also like always like small. We are small people. We have our culture and everything. We're proud of it, but we know we're not like the coolest or like the biggest or the strongest. And
Yeah.
Russia was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. little brother, something like that.
So like, we're both kind of from little brother countries.
Yeah, yeah.
Next
like,
to like this big superpower.
Yeah, I'm sure I think that Canadians don't have this like complex of like being the strongest or the coolest. This is what I like about Canadians. You're like, when I try to explain to myself how US and Canada kind of work, is when you picture like a family that are two brothers and there's an older brother who's like a football player, like quarterback or something. Is that the thing? Is that the word?
Yeah.
Quarterback. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So kind of like
throws the ball.
Sports guy, the popular kid in school who's like, yeah, I can do everything. And there's like a little kind of a little weird younger kid who's like into learns French for no reason, is like nerdy, kind of is like just living a quiet life. But then later, if we're making a movie about it, it's like the older brother usually gets in trouble later in life, and the younger brother is the one who has like quiet quality time with the family, has like a house or something like that. So
yeah, the idea of being next door to a superpower, it comes with a lot of advantages and it comes with a lot of disadvantages. And yeah, I guess we're seeing that now today more than ever, probably.
Well, I'm being kind of optimistic about that because I know a lot of people from Russia and from Ukraine as well. And all of them are great, honestly. It's a lot. Our circle kind of defies our relationship with like the nation and everything. I don't know every Russian, but I know some that are very nice people and genuinely like are worried about what is happening. And many people in Ukraine are also like that. There are extremes at both sides. I left that situation and I'm trying not to tell people how they're supposed to live their life or like how they should treat each other. But I like feel like it's going to be great at the end. This is what I'm trying to be focused on. And I think in terms of Canada and the US right now, it's also kind of temporary, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, it's like, we have a trade war, but that's not the same thing as an actual war. It causes, economic issues in Canada, but it doesn't take people's lives. And so it's very different what we have here than what's going on in Ukraine. So is that the reason that you moved to Canada then?
Yes, I lived in Russia for like 10 years, something, maybe a little bit less after it was taken by Russia. But the important thing to remember is like people in Crimea actually voted for this. It might not be legal or it might be legal, I don't know. But they did, and I know for a fact that there's a big Russian population in Crimea, so I'm kind of like Russian-Ukrainian. And for me, it was kind of easy to blend in with Russia when Crimea was taken. But at the same time, you're still Russian. You're still Ukrainian. I was still Ukrainian. So I had to be very careful about that. That kind of, when you live in that stress, this kind of situation that you're Ukrainian, you should hide it, not to mention it, like if possible, avoiding it, like mostly. Eventually they announced the draft that they're gonna call people to serve. And I technically can't do it still. Like I have an autoimmune disease that prevents me from serving in the military. But at that time, it was like, they might still do it. Like nothing is really stopping them. So I was going to leave. I should have left earlier, honestly, of course. But the money, the like kind of where to go. This is the problem. Many of the problems that I had at that point were problems that most people think they would never experience. And I was one of them. You never think of, what if the part of my country where I live is taken by another country, and what do I do then? No, it's a thing that not a lot of people think about. And when it happened, when Crimea was taken, I was 18 years old, and I was in Ukraine at the time. So at that point already, I had a chance maybe go back to my homeland or stay in Ukraine and maybe finish my education because I was freshman at the university. And that it's already a big choice for an 18-year-old. And you think, like, what do? I stay? Do I go back? And then there are rumors that they're going to close the border, so I'm never going to be able to go back. So I decided to go back to Crimea. And I tried to have a higher education. I'm very into languages, as you can probably say. And it took a while, but I got into another university. Then the pandemic came. And I was already blown away. Like, I'm probably cursed. I won't be able to finish my education because then every time I try to do something horrible happens. But then I thought it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. And a couple of years after that, the invasion happened. In Ukraine, full-on war started happening, and I thought I'm ready for everything at that point, but I wasn't, and that was just a loud reality check that I need to leave as quick as possible. I was gonna go to Europe, but Europe is quite close to Russia, so they are being very careful with Russians. And even though I have dual citizenship, I'm also Ukrainian and Russian, they decided to treat me as a Russian. So I wasn't able to go there. And at that point, I was crushed. I was like, okay, that's it. There's no way for me to leave. There's no way for me to do anything. And you feel kind of hopeless. And a friend of a friend reached out to me. And they said, hey, you can go to Canada still. It's further away. People don't really care that much because it's further away. The further away from the conflict you go, the less people can kind of feel it and less they're sensitive about it. And I was like, that's a great idea. I need to go there. It was complicated. I still had to cross Russian border. It's really hard to do as a man, as a Ukrainian man. In Europe's case, it was difficult, but then I needed to fly to Turkey. And Turkey's, I guess, considered a friend of like Russia. So they don't have as much kind of control over the border there. So I flew to Turkey, and from there I flew to Amsterdam, and from there directly to Toronto.
So you were saying that like it's hard to cross certain borders as a Russian, but would you not be eligible to be a refugee in other European countries? Like,
it's a good question. I thought I should be, but so the first thing I thought about when going to the border was being careful with like customs workers and like what are they, like police or like KGB in Russia's case. They're called FSB in Russian. So because a lot of my friends at that time already left, and I heard things from there. I heard some news, and all of them said that it was almost like impossible to leave. Like it takes hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks, when you are being prosecuted many times, and you have to be convincing. You have to convince them that it's not political reasons, that you are like pro homeland and everything. So you need to really pull this act where you can either pretend you don't know anything, you're oblivious to whatever is happening, or you can be pro Russia and like you're a good guy, I'm on your side. I just go in to visit my friends. It's fine. So I was concentrated on that. And you need to like bring not too much with you. You don't have to bring too much because otherwise they're going to think you're leaving for good. So that was really my focus. And then I went. It was like really like a spy movie action. I went to the border of a European country that I will not name because I don't want to put a stain on their reputation. And I was kind of preparing myself to like Russian border, and everything kind of went okay. Like I was prosecuted. It took a while. It took a lot of time, probably like 4 or 5 hours. And then I left. I went to the European part of the border, and I was already uplifting. Like the mood was getting better. I felt great. Like, okay, the worst is behind me. And another thing I was told that you don't lie to the workers of the border because they will know if you have any documents. So don't conceal anything if you have anything, any other documents. So I went to this border and I was like, hey, I'm Ukrainian. Here's my Ukrainian documents. Thank you so much. Can I just go? So I can leave this all behind and kind of breathe like that, just easily. And they asked me if I had something else, like other documents. And I was like, well, I also have like a Russian passport. And they're like, oh, it's no good. And I was, at that point, I was kind of questioning the reality of what is happening. Like, I'm sorry, what? And they're like, you can't go. You're Russian. I'm like, but I'm also Ukrainian. Look, no, it doesn't count. If you're Russian, but you're also anything else, everything else doesn't count. I was very angry at this situation at first, but then you think about it and you understand that, well, they probably have like their reasons to be kind of defensive against it. I mean, considering what is happening there. I understand. But at that point, yes, if you are Russian, then Europe doesn't really want you to be there necessarily.
Even if you're Ukrainian as well,
You might
that
be
doesn't matter.
even you might be Canadian Russian, and they might not let you out.
I mean, I get Russia not wanting to let people out because they want to. I mean, they had a draft, right? They wanted people to fight, and if you're a young guy, they're like, yeah, we want you, don't go anywhere. I get their political motivation behind that, I guess, but I don't understand the political motivation of other countries not letting Russians in. I mean, you're the country that you're from can be an initiator of a war, but that doesn't mean that the people that live there can't also be victims, right?
I mean, that's all true, and I'm with you on that one. But at this point, when this sort of thing is happening, we are all kind of being reduced to our nation, like what we are, or our passports, and nothing else really matters that much, because most people kind of think, they just look at you on the surface. They don't have time to figure out if you're a nice person or not. I always think about it like when you think about like Second World War, we say Germans attacked, but it wasn't probably all Germans. Some of them felt nice. Some of them were against this regime that was happening at the time. But we all say Germans, and we also say Russia attacked Ukraine, even though most of Russians that I know never voted for this, never wanted this, and just woke up one day being like, okay, so I guess we're doing this. So I guess this is what's happening. And this is what a lot of people don't understand about Russians, because Russians have no control over this situation. And I lived in Russia for like 10 years, and most Russians tried everything they could think of. We looked at like Europe, we looked at the United States. What do we do if something in the country is happening that is wrong? We do a rally. Let's do a rally. And I went to many rallies that were happening in Moscow. Thousands of people were outside. In many cases, many things that were happening in Russia were not great. And people were having rallies all the time. And once you went to like 5 rallies, then 10 rallies, 15, at some point you're like, okay, we're doing this and nothing is changing. Nothing is really happening. I mean, we gather together and we're happy to see each other. And we see that we share some kind of ideas and we're connecting and communicating. But other than that, nothing in the country is really changing. So that makes you lose hope and think of yourself like most of people in Russia are just tired people who don't believe anything, because everybody lies. Like Russian TV lies, probably European also lies. That's what they think. And yeah, this is kind of the feeling that most of the Russians have. I don't know how to change it. I get what causes European like leaders or like just generally Europeans to act like against Russians or like don't think that Russians are good people. I see where they're coming from when they think like that. But it's difficult for me as a Russian person to ask people to look deeper into a person right now, because it's difficult, it's sensitive, it's hurtful. So at this point, most Russians who don't want war to happen, never wanted war to happen, they just accept it. They take the hate humbly, like, yeah, we did that. We didn't want to, but we get why you're angry. We're okay. And that's a good thing to do right now, because everything else is, we don't know what else to do, basically.
Yeah. That's a tough position to be in, because you're kind of like someone who's fallen through the cracks, right? You're you could be treated as the attacking nation, but you're also from the a nation being attacked, and so yeah, you're kind of in an uncomfortable position, it sounds like, between the two countries. And I understand now why the question where you're from is a hard one.
Oh yeah. It's also just a habit. It consists of many different issues that are connected. I made a video about that. We in Crimea we call ourselves Russians sometimes, but not in the meaning that English word Russian has. We have 2 other words that both mean Russians, but they're not the same. Then you go to Russia, like the continental Russia, the big Russia, the country, and there you understand that saying that you're Ukrainian can cause some issues, so you hide that. Then you understand that there are also many laws that kind of like suppress people's like will or desire to express something, because you might go to jail because of that. So in Russia, I think this is different from Ukraine. Ukraine is more kind of open-minded and liberal. But in Russia, like, people know that it's best to keep your mouth shut. Don't speak too much to like someone you don't know. Just like be careful with what you're saying and who you're talking to. Kind of like that. And in my case, as a Russian Ukrainian, that's kind of a double. It works both ways. In Russia, I need to be careful about my Ukrainian roots. And in Europe and in Ukraine, I need to be careful about my Russian roots. So this is kind of the situation I have.
Wow. And so you were leaving the country, you were leaving Russia, and when you were 18, is that what you said?
When I was, yeah, this is a complicated story. When I was 18, I left Ukraine to go to Russia because, well, technically Crimea is Russian, so I had to go back home.
That's when Crimea was first occupied,
yes.
Or that's when yes, okay.
That's when it was first occupied. So I lived first 18 years of my life in Ukraine. Then when I was 18, ironically, like one day before my birthday, I was born on March 19th, and they voted on March 18th. And this is when my mom called me and said, hey, we're in another country now. And I'm like, sorry, what? Then I had a conversation about that. So I went from Ukraine to Russia. Then I lived in Russia for like 10 years. And now I'm here. That's kind of my journey.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty traumatic way to celebrate your birthday, I feel like, and also the years after that. I can't imagine going through all that stuff, and especially at such a young age.